So, we saw Son of God.
Yes.
And to give you the quick rundown before we really get into it, to kind of tell you whether we like the movie or not, if you want to stop it, go see it without any spoilers. Not that there's a lot to spoil in probably the most told story in the world. I did not like this movie. I don't want to make fun of it. I'm not saying that it's bad or that it was so bad it's good. It's not like a train wreck that you need to go out and see. It is very clearly a miniseries, a TV miniseries that was adapted for theaters, and it really shows. I've seen part of the miniseries. I've seen some of this footage before, and I think that's probably the best way to see it if you want to see it. I really don't think it's worth anybody's time at the theater, or certainly not worth a full price ticket. But that was kind of my headline of the movie.
Yeah, I'd kind of agree. There's not a whole lot of cinematic spectacle to make it a movie theater film. I can see it being suited for television, There's not a whole lot of moments that make you think, wow, real big on-screen thing going on. And the thing that struck me as a bit of a negative is the characters, especially one so important like as Jesus, really didn't seem that way, charisma-wise, or didn't seem or feel spiritual and miraculous. It really felt like actors saying lines.
Yeah.
Or in often cases, just standing next to people saying lines.
So, just the real quick version, is there anyone that you would recommend this movie to? Is there some audience for this movie that you think should go out and see it, or no?
Yeah, I guess anyone that's not read the Bible or doesn't know that story at all. If they have, then they've probably saw films like this, and that's another negative, is there's no new territory in terms of telling that story. That story is so well known, and it's been told 1,000 times. I was really surprised that there's no area it went into that you haven't seen in some other form. So
yeah. So I guess the miniseries that this was adapted from is an Emmy-winning miniseries. It's a 10-part History Channel show, and for a History Channel show, it's decent. But the way that the miniseries is done, it's narrated by Keith David, and all of the scenes are pretty much set up by him. So you hear his voice set up, and then Jesus talked to his followers, and then Jesus says a couple of lines, and then it'll go to another scene, and Keith David sets that up, and then some people will say a couple of lines. There's really very few points in this movie where two or more characters on screen will have a conversation. It's a lot of reciting, it's a lot of talking, and it's just sort of the beats that you would expect in the telling of a Jesus story for about the first hour and 20 minutes, and then maybe it was just me getting tired, or maybe it really did fall apart at this point. But when they transferred it to film, they took the Keith David narration out, so that doesn't.
You feel like it lacked greatly because of that?
I felt like the last half of the movie was just people kind of standing around doing things. Like, they show the crucifixion eventually. It takes what seems like another 45 minutes to an hour after he's arrested before they get on with telling the story of the crucifixion, and eventually the resurrection, and a little piece of what comes after that. But there's long parts with no dialogue. And just not a whole lot going on screen.
Which would be fine if there was more visually interesting stuff to it.
They cut to the sky, or they cut to a curtain, and
just arbitrary stuff.
Is this an Enya music video, or is this?
Yeah.
So I feel like if you want to see this particular version of this story, maybe watch, even if you're not up for all 10 parts of the miniseries, maybe watch like the 3 or 4 episodes that Jesus appears in the miniseries. But this is over 2 hours long. It's 138 minutes. It really feels like it really, really drags. From a production quality standpoint, to get it from the TV version into the film version, they do a lot of digital panning, especially in the beginning.
Shakeovision.
And it's really, even on top of being taken out of it by the fact that no one's having conversations and scenes just sort of start and end, like you can feel the void of the narration missing. It's constantly like there's just these weird like pan and zoom effects, like you try to take something that was made for a television screen and try to squish it onto a movie screen. The only like laughably bad part of it, as far as the production of it goes, there's these establishing shots that we both just kept cracking up at. Anytime they would establish, a temple or Jerusalem or any of that kind of stuff, there would be this either a still or like a slow pan of just the worst CGI, like PlayStation 1 era CGI graphics. The resolution would dip down to like, it looked like a 320 by 240.
Blur-o-vision.
Yeah, all blurred out, like you're watching it on a CD-ROM game or something like that. And it just looks so terrible, and I couldn't think of why, if that's the way it is in the miniseries, why they would leave it that way when they brought it to the theater. That if they were going to put some, because it didn't cost them any more money
to step up and to
do it. Like they could have spent $10,000 on some new computer graphics and
agreed.
Like any frame from Rio 2, the Rio 2 trailer we saw before this, looked, 100 years better with that.
More consistent too.
Yeah, and that was also a jarring thing when you go from, a 4K movie to this obviously up-res CGI.
TV commercial is better than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was almost like stock footage from 10 years ago, but yeah. That's not a whole lot. I just what struck me is how Caucasian everyone was. Jesus's mom is like, I'm pretty sure she works over here.
Yeah.
And Jesus himself is pretty Caucasian. I think they just found as many Caucasians with big noses as they could.
Yeah.
And thought that'll do.
Jesus is he's played by a Portuguese actor. Most of the other actors in the depictions of the scenes, all the Romans speak with a British accent. The actor that plays Jesus speaks with a sort of Portuguese accent, obviously, and that's all kind of really jarring. It doesn't really mesh very well. I'm pretty sure that the actress that plays Mary at the beginning and the actress that plays Mary at the end of the story are two different people. I think they had a young actress for the beginning when he's born and an older actress for later when he's an adult, which, by the way, they skip his entire childhood. They go from he's born at the beginning of the movie, like as the credits are rolling, and then poof, he's an adult. So it's weird. They just kind of skip around. They do a lot of stuff like that. I didn't find anything. I don't want to be pedantic about, it's white Jesus or that the theology is particularly bad or good or authentic. It's just it just doesn't work as a movie. That's just the simplest way of saying it.
It's TV.
It's television, and it's adapted television. I don't know. I don't know if I would. Well, it wasn't engaging enough. I started to watch, I think, the 7th episode of the miniseries, which is about where this movie picks up, as the adult Jesus. And I watched about 30 or 40 minutes of it, and just I couldn't keep doing it. it kept taking me out of it that Keith David just keeps interrupting with the narration, and that's the style of the miniseries, and that's all fine, but that did not. It also just didn't translate well into adapting that into a movie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
blah. But anyway, I was Son of God. Thanks.